Thank you very much. And I call on Alex Rowley.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I take this opportunity to welcome everyone back to Parliament? And can I also take this opportunity to congratulate all who were involved in the construction and the design of the Queensferry Crossing, the magnificent new bridge linking the wonderful Kingdom of Fife to the Lothians. It was good to be at the official opening yesterday, and I do hope that more members of this place will take the opportunity to venture across the Forth and enjoy some of the delights of Fife. I also want to congratulate all the workers involved in building the aircraft carriers. The HMS Prince of Wales will have its naming ceremony in Rosyth this Friday, and I say well done to everyone that was involved. The First Minister in her speech today has announced an extensive programme for her government, and she will be looking for support across this chamber. I want to be clear that Labour will not oppose for the sake of opposing, and we will work constructively with the government where it is in the best interests of the people of Scotland to do so. Equally, I hope the government, for its part, will be more open to working with others and be open to listening to other ideas and other opinions. She has listened to us and agreed to lift the public sector pay cap. This is to be welcomed. And her plan to launch a national investment bank to boost our economy is also good news. This, like scrapping the pay cap, was part of Labour's general election manifesto. Unfortunately, however, without a Labour government in Westminster, it won't have the £20 billion of lending power to get it started. But nevertheless, we very much welcome the announcement. We will be looking for complete transparency on how it is to be set up, who is put in charge of what should be a vital part of Scotland's economic infrastructure. However, it seems that in other areas of government, the ears were closed to the advice, ideas and experiences. Carrying on with the poor education governance reforms, which have been criticised by all in the sector, is, in our view, pure dogmatic politics. The First Minister has often said she wants to be judged on what her government does to improve our education system. So let's just remind ourselves of a few of the facts. Over 4,000 fewer teachers than when the SNP came to power. 1,000 fewer support staff than when the SNP came to power. Class sizes bigger than when the SNP came to power. Spending per pupil across all ages is down. If pupil spend had remained the same as the 2010-11 levels, then primary schools would be £726 million better off, and secondary schools would be £308 million better off. I cannot see how what is proposed today addresses any of this. Indeed, it seems to me it is a classic avoidance technique. When in doubt, restructure. It did not work for Police Scotland. It did not work for fire and rescue. It did not work for our colleges, and it will not work for our schools. Presiding Officer, I have used much of this summer recess to meet and listen to people and listen to what they have to say. The teachers I spoke to over the summer, they told me about the impact of the cuts in schools and in classrooms. Workloads that they have them completely run off their feet. Class sizes that are far too large. The need for more teaching assistants in our classrooms. And they told me not about having the basic materials to be able to provide the teaching and learning of the quality we need.
James Dornan.
Thank you, Mr Rowley, for taking the intervention. Does he then regret the decision made by North Lanarkshire Council when they went into coalition with the Tories, and the first thing that they did was they sacked 100 classroom
What I regret is the £170 million in the local council budget last year that meant classroom assistants and others being taken out of the Education Authority. It really is rich for SNPM SPs to come in here and talk about council cuts when they voted for those council cuts. Most of the concerns that are being expressed by teachers are a result of severe shortage of funding in education. And that is, First Minister, what needs to be addressed if we're going to tackle education and the issues in education. Taking control of education away from our councils will not address any of these issues. And that brings me to local government. We must recognise that local councils are on the front line of supporting people suffering from failed Tory austerity. Local councils lead on planning and economic development, health and social care, protecting our environment, the education of our children and the health and well-being of our communities. The obsession of this SNP government to centralise local government has got to stop. The willingness to pass on Tory austerity to local public services has got to stop. The government must change course, must build a new partnership with local councils, one built on mutual respect, understanding and joined-up planning to tackle the big issues in our communities.
Claire Adamson.
Thank you for taking the intervention, Mr Rowley. I appreciate what you're saying about local government, something that's very dear to my heart, having served as a councillor in North Lanarkshire. But you've just talked about cuts. Why did North Lanarkshire Labour fail to use the flexibility in the council tax to maybe alleviate some of those cuts?
Alex Rowley.
We need to make sure in this next budget round that we do not simply pass on failed Tory austerity to local councils and local public services. I really hope that the First Minister and indeed the Finance Minister are listening to what others are saying. For it is time to use the powers of this Parliament to pay for a more fair, more equal society to support our public services. Time to introduce a 50p top rate of income tax. Have an honest discussion with the people of Scotland to show that those who can afford to pay a bit more should do so. And scrap the unfair council tax as she once promised she would do, for no amount of tinkering with the bands will make it any fairer. And while they say they will lift the public sector pay cap, let us be clear in this debate, it cannot be done on the back of cutting even more from public services. It must be paid for. I have listened, Presiding Officer, to the hundreds of people this summer at street stalls, coffee mornings and on the doorsteps. It should be no surprise to the First Minister that people right across Scotland are very concerned about the state of our National Health Service. We have an NHS workforce crisis. Today, new figures show how bad it is. Nursing and midwife vacancies are up. Consultant vacancies are up. And over 400 operations were cancelled in July. I'm not sure anything that the First Minister said today is actually going to tackle these major issues in our health service. For the hundreds queuing outside GP practices trying to get an appointment, the people being removed from the list, those trapped in hospitals, those on waiting lists for care packages, waiting lists for operations, waiting to see specialists or seeking mental health support. Will this programme of government bring change for them? I'm not sure. It should also not be a surprise that people were raising the problems of housing. Shelter say Scotland has a housing crisis. I agree. So too do the tens of thousands on council waiting lists, the homeless and the children who leave school each day with no home to call their own. I have welcomed the Government's commitment to build 50,000 affordable houses, 35,000 of which is social rented. But I say again, we need a national house build strategy to ensure it happens. We cannot allow this housing crisis to continue. And that brings me to skills, apprenticeships and jobs. In near enough every sector of our economy, we have major skills gaps. Our ambition must surely be a high-skill, high-wage economy. And yet we currently have 71,000 people on zero-hour contracts. There are 40,000 agency workers in Scotland with little security of work, a figure that is predicted to rise significantly unless something is done. So we will work with the Government on the measures they have announced today, but it must be more than warm words. Will she listen to us and consider Labour's proposal for an industrial strategy for Scotland? Action speaks louder than words, and it is action we need. And talking of action, we have worked with the Government on its child poverty bill. I do hope it will agree to establish an independent statutory poverty and inequality commission for Scotland. Setting child poverty targets is one thing, but it is action that is needed to tackle child poverty. Again, listen to Labour. Use the powers of this Parliament to increase child benefit by £5 a week and lift over 30,000 children out of poverty over these next 3 years. Action speaks louder than words. And listen to Labour drop the proposal for the 50% cut in air passenger duty. This would cost Scottish taxpayers nearly £190 million. Drop that idea and invest it on tackling the unacceptable levels of poverty in Scotland. Presiding Officer, there are positive measures in the Government's programme today, but there are still huge challenges facing Scotland that are not addressed. We will work with the Government where we can. We will hold them to account where we can. And we will bring forward the ideas to tackle the big challenges facing communities up and down Scotland in 2017. Thank you.